So I continue this mini preaching series about the bread that gives life. Just a recap for those who were not here for the past two Sundays. 2 Sundays ago, I talked about the desire of Jesus to feed his sheep with this bread. Last Sunday, I talked about our desire to be fed by this bread. Because of course, even if Jesus has this great desire to feed us, if we don't have any desire to receive this bread, he can't force himself to us. And then this Sunday, I will be talking about our desire to share this bread to other people. Next year, May, I will be going back to my home country, Philippines. The last time I was there was in 2018. So next year will be 7 years since I last went home. And I haven't seen my family, friends, classmates there for a long time. And in the Philippines, there's a lot of poverty there. 18.1% of the total population of 110 million lives below the poverty. Okay? So if you do the math, 18.1% times 110 million is 20 million. That's more than half of the population of Canada, which is living under poverty. Okay? And there's a lot of like squatter areas there. And if you go to a squatter area and you hand out a food to a beggar, you will be swamped by other beggars. Because I think they have a network there of sharing information, where to get food. And they can't keep it to themselves because they know how it is to be hungry, how it is to be sick, how it is to be so weak. They can't keep it to themselves. They need to share that information to other beggars. In this picture, we see Jesus feeding this bread to a beggar. The question that I want to ask ourselves is that, do we see ourselves as this beggar who is spiritually weak and hungry? That without this bread of life, it will not sustain us in our spiritual journey, because we will not have that strength to be able to do God's will. In our gospel today, we see here, Jesus said, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. Jesus is giving this bread of life to a world that has succumbed to spiritual death. Because all men have sinned, and the wages of sin is death. Okay? He's giving us this bread of life to give us the strength to be able to obey God's will. If disobedience led us to death, it is obedience that will lead us to life. So even if you receive the Eucharist every day, but you're not obeying the will of God, you're experiencing spiritual death. Okay? The bread of life gives us strength to be able to do God's will. Okay? Father Bob Bedard, the founder of the Companions of the Cross, gave a simple definition of evangelization. He said, evangelization is just one beggar telling another where to find bread. How many of you have remembered that? Father Bob saying that. Okay? It's a simple definition of evangelization. One beggar telling another where to find bread. Now, the question is, do we need Christ as much as a beggar needs bread? Are we being satisfied, nourished, and strengthened by this bread? And are we supposed to share this bread with others? And you see your friends, you see your loved ones, you see your neighbors, you see your co-workers. They seem to be doing well, especially when you see their posts on social media Facebook, Instagram, they look so happy, they look so successful, they seem to be doing well. But we really don't know what they're undergoing underneath that. Underneath that facade, you don't see where they are struggling. Are they struggling in their relationship? Are they struggling in a particular sin, in an addiction, mental illness? You don't know that, right? They need the bread of life, okay? And that's why in Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, it says there, when he saw the crowds, Jesus, he was deeply moved with compassion for them because they were troubled and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus is moved with compassion whenever he sees a sheep that is lost without a shepherd, because no one could feed them, right? In John chapter 10, verse 16, it says, I have other sheep that are not of the sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Okay? So the Lord wants other sheep who is not part of the sheepfold to be part of this, so that he too will be able to feed them with the bread of life. And I'm sure you've met people who are loving, but they don't believe God. How many of you know people who are loving, but they don't believe God? Okay? I tell you, even though they don't believe God, because they are loving, they're actually having God in their heart. Because whenever you love, God is in you, because God is love. Okay? They are also not conscious that they are loving Jesus as they love. Because Jesus said, if you love me, you will obey my commandments. Okay? So they unknowingly and unconsciously believe and love God. Okay? Now for them, for those who are loving, they could still go to heaven. Okay? But it will be harder for them to go to heaven. That's why it's a great disadvantage for them not to receive the bread of life. And I've shared this with you, this analogy, maybe you're hearing this again, the analogy of golf. Okay? Everyone has different levels of playing golf. If you are not a good golf player, you have a higher handicap. And if you're a good player of golf, you have a lower handicap. Okay? For those who are not receiving the bread of life, they have a bigger handicap. Okay? They could still go to heaven, but it will be harder. Just like those who have a higher handicap in golf, they can still play and win the golf. But they have a higher handicap. Okay? That's why, we need to share the good news to other people about this bread of life. Now, for us Catholics who are receiving the Eucharist, the bread of life, we can't be complacent. Because if we don't prepare ourselves to receive the Eucharist well, and then don't rely on the graces that we receive here, we are also endangering ourselves not be able to go to heaven. Okay? That's why there is that urgency to share this good news to other people. Okay? Now, so that people will start to believe in Jesus. Romans chapter 10, verse 14 to 15, it says there, how then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Okay? If you're a beggar sharing this good news to other beggars about this, the source of food, isn't that good news to other beggars? Yes? Right? It's good news. And we're called to share this good news. That's why at the end of the Mass, the dismissal, the priest or the deacon will say, go and announce the good news of the Lord. Right? Go and announce the gospel of the Lord. We need to share the good news about Jesus, the bread of life, to other people. Now, we know we need to share the good news. But the question is, why are we doing much in sharing this good news to other people? And I think it has to do with a lot of fear. Okay? Fear of failure. Fear of what people think of us. Fear of being rejected. Fear of not knowing enough. Fear of not having the tools on how to evangelize. Here at St. Mary's, we know that the second priority for the 3-year revival plan is evangelization. For us to be able to do that, we need to overcome what? Fear. Okay? That's why we're providing opportunities for people to undergo training and for you to practice doing it so that you will be able to overcome fear. Starting this September, we will be teaching people to do door-to-door evangelization, sharing to our neighbors about the good news. Because we don't want to be feasting inside the church while our neighbors are spiritually starving. And that's what's happening, right? We're feasting here, and our neighbors who are not coming to church, they are spiritually starving. Okay? That's why we're doing this door-to-door evangelization. And some people are not ready to come to Mass. This is too much for them. Okay? That's why we're hoping to have like a coming home event in the future wherein it's an opportunity for new believers to have some form of fellowship, teachings, and a time of prayer for each other. Okay? And accompany them so that they would become ready to receive Jesus in the Eucharist. Jesus has this great desire to feed us with His bread. Do we have that desire to receive Jesus? Do we see ourselves as weak, in need of this strength? Do we see ourselves in darkness, in need of His light? Do we see that without Jesus, our life is without fervor? Do we see ourselves spiritually sick without this medicine that this divine physician is giving us? And hopefully, as we are being nourished, strengthened, and transformed by this bread of life, we have this great desire to share this with others so that they too will be nourished, strengthened, and transformed. This bread of life is too good. And this is not meant to keep it to ourselves. This is meant to share it with others.